You said what? Oh, you could have just started. You started the recording?
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. You seem far away. I don't know if it's because I'm closer in there and you're not. But
You
either
want to
way.
move the table like that?
You want me to come closer or it don't matter to me?
No. I mean, because remember, we're going to have a table right here anyway.
I mean, that's cool. What I'm saying is just the shot. Like, I'm more in the shot than you are. Like, I'm closer in.
Well, I'm also angled, and you're facing directly forward.
I thought we should probably face directly forward instead of this.
That's because you see it like a anchor.
A what?
An anchor.
What do you mean?
A news anchor?
Me?
Yeah.
I don't see it.
So maybe if you get a little more relaxed.
I feel like this is how we should be sitting. Are you ready? Well, I don't know how you want to open it.
Oh, so welcome back to RealiTEA with Dashia D. I know it has been a while. Honestly, y'all, it's because I was covering Real Housewives of Atlanta. And they've been on the struggle bus when it comes to casting. And so I was just like, okay, well, what other reality-related things am I watching? Before we jump into that, I wanted to introduce a very special guest. He is an author. He is an alpha.
A man of many talents.
And he is also my co-host of In Retrospect podcast, Jay Stain.
Welcome. Welcome to myself. Welcome to everybody that is watching the show. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Always remember to like, comment, and subscribe. This should be a good conversation we're about to have. So I'm delighted to be here. I'm always here. I'm always around. So yeah, let's get into it.
And also, y'all keep in mind, we are still building. So we are testing out different angles and building our set and things like that. So just bear with us. So last week, Investigation Discovery Channel, which is a channel that I frequent, they created a docuseries following the toxic culture behind Nickelodeon and some of their biggest shows like All That and The Amanda Show.
Drake and Josh.
Yes. Now, this happened, I would say, late 90s, early 2000s, where let's just start with the lighter things compared to other things, right? So they invited on some women who used to help in the writing room. And they talked about how Dan Schneider, allegedly, was very misogynistic and abusive towards women. He would sexualize them. He would ask them to massage his head. He would make very inappropriate sexual jokes towards them. And position himself as a man like, what are you going to do about it? This is your only opportunity. Who are you going to tell? So let's start with that. What were your thoughts when you heard the women talking about, I guess, just the way that he treated them? And oh yeah, I forgot this part. They had to split a paycheck. They didn't have their own salary. They split a paycheck, which is crazy to me.
I think the wildest part about that specific part of the entire Quiet on the Set documentary was that the way he was going about, the way he was conducting himself in the workplace was wild. And not only did he ask these women to do all these extracurricular things for him, they had to also do their job. And if they didn't do their job, they'd get fired. So it was really crazy just to hear about, someone he specifically needs a massage daily, weekly, all the time. And it's just like on the set and folks got stuff they need to be doing. Otherwise they're already going to get fired. But if they tell you no, then they're going to get fired too as well. So it's just very it just didn't create a place of work that people would want to go to. But of course, when everybody's trying to chase a dream and do something that they love or want to do or aspiring to do, they're willing to put up with a lot. But it just wasn't right. Nobody should be splitting salaries anyway. Eventually, as you watch the doc, it explains how, sometimes people have to experience life and learn that what's right and what's wrong and how stuff should be conducted. And all that is unraveled. I think a main thing that brought it all to the light was the Me Too movement. It helped a lot because if it never took place, nobody really would have ever heard of it, which is wild.
So I think, of course, all of the things that Justin said is true. I'll be honest. So watching it, in my mind, I was like, why wouldn't they just go to HR and say something, right? But then I had to pause myself and think about human nature.
You said HR.
Yeah. So I had to
HR
pause. Hold on.
HR.
So I had to pause myself and think, like, in reality, I think a lot of people see things that are we would deem inappropriate at work, whether it's between two coworkers or a supervisor and their subordinate, like whatever the case may be. I'm sure that we all have seen it happen, and it may have happened to us, and we have not gone to HR. Why? Because we're just like, oh, that's just such and such. That's how he is, or that's how she is. Because I myself, right, have been in certain situations where I felt like, okay, this is either it happened to me or around me. I'm like, this is not appropriate. The only time that I did speak up, I used to work at this place when I was in school. I'm not going to call the place out. I used to work at this place while I was in school, and it was a restaurant. And it was this guy, and I worked in the kitchen. Now, on Sundays, they had brunches, and during the brunches, I did what was called expo, which you're standing right behind the chefs, and you're preparing the plates before they go out. Now, there was one of the chefs, he would always be super flirty with me. I would ignore him. Like, I'm not even checking for you. I'm not on that type of time. And I would just shrug it off. And so one day after my shift, I'm walking to my car and I hear footsteps behind me, right? I turn around and it's old boy. So it was at that moment where I was like, oh yeah, no, you're taking this to another level. And I immediately, when I was able to safely get in my car and pull away, I immediately called my supervisor and said, yeah, don't ever schedule me with this person again because he has done X, Y, and Z. Granted, should I have gone to them during like the little flirty, like he's saying it? Probably so. But I think a lot of times we don't want to rock the boat. And I think that's what these women were doing in that moment, right? They were young. They were like in their 20s. First time having a salary-based job. You don't want to rock the boat and you don't want to lose your job. So I get that. So as the documentary continues, one of the writers, she attempted to sue him, but it really didn't, him being Dan Schneider, but it didn't really go anywhere. Fast forward, that's when we start to learn about his interactions with the children. And so they go on to talk about all that. I know a lot of, if you're a 90s baby, you remember all that. It was a comedy-based show, sketches like SNL, but for kids, or Wild 'N Out, but for kids. And they had on a child actor, I think his name is Brian Hearn. It's a black guy. He talked about how there was a sketch where he was nose boy, and they had noses all over him. But of course, the noses were shaped like male anatomy. Okay, and it's all over him, and he's a kid. And everybody's just like, yeah, and that's just going on. It was an instance where they had him covered in peanut butter and had some dogs come in and lick it off of him. There's an instance where they had him playing Lil Fetus, a rapper. They had to get skin, like a leotard basically, but just all over him that was his skin tone color. And saying like, oh, get something that's charcoal. Mind you, he's brown skin. And that's honestly, that's the milder stuff that they talked about. Because then if you look at the clips, I'm sure it's all over TikTok at this point. It was a lot of sexual innuendos in a lot of shows where you have girls where they are directing them to do a cum shot, basically. There's no other word for that. Where they're just squirting things on them and they just have them doing a lot of suggestive activities, and it's a kid show.
Yeah, it was really disturbing in general. Just seeing like people being exploited, like nationally and kids specifically. But see, growing up, because I used to watch all these shows that we're discussing, it just never registered as a child. you don't think about that. Well, back then you didn't. Let me rephrase it. Back then you didn't think about it as a child of, oh, this is not right. But all the adults in the room are like, should have gave you a cause to pause and be like, well, what is going on here? And it's just really wild how they were pushing like the boundaries a whole lot back then in general. And just like, for instance, like the whole peanut butter one with the guy with the peanut butter child with peanut butter all over him at the time as a kid. And you got dog coming up, licking up on him. That was just disturbing in itself. And I'm just like, well, what was the point of the skit? Oh, it's funny. I'm like, you find it funny. A lot of people didn't find it funny. And it's just interesting. Like Dashia mentioned, you got all these kids around, but only X amount of adults are around. And these kids, they're filming or, they're doing all these skits, remembering lines. They're even taking classes here at the set or the studio. So which means they're there for 10 or 11 hours around certain adults because sometimes the parents aren't even there all the time.
And again, one would ask, why didn't the parents say anything? Why? Well, of course the kids aren't going to say anything because they probably, depending on how sheltered you are and the fact that you're at elementary school or middle school age, at that time, because today is a whole new world, but at that time, they probably didn't know what was going on. And like you said, I didn't know that that's what they were doing. But the crazy thing is, when they were playing these clips, it unlocked certain memories in my head. One in particular was the coffee and sugar sketch, where they're running under the coffee and running under. Like, I forgot all about that until they were playing it. And then when they played it, I was like,
yeah, that's kind of OD.
Yeah. That's a lot.
I just wanted to put a disclaimer out there as well. When I said, like, they're around certain adults the whole time. Now, I will say, like, the documentary, of course, Quiet on the Set did let it be known that, some parents were there more than others. So when I say what I'm saying, I'm not saying that everybody had the same experience where their parents weren't around, because there are people that have came out and said that their parents were there, or their parents themselves said they were there throughout the whole thing.
But even the kids whose parents were there, they were still allegedly victimized. So let's just put that out there. Well, not even allegedly. The kids that spoke up, these people were convicted. Like, they were convicted of a lot, like, exploiting these kids and sexually abusing some of them.
Right.
So it just, I don't know. And the crazy thing is, for years, you will hear like Hollywood is Holly weird, and they have all these crazy things going on, and kid actors. Because think about it, y'all. We don't see it as much now, but when we were growing up, millennials that is, you would always see the child actors, most of the time the white child actors in particular, who would like become young adults and be strung out on drugs. Or they have an episode like a Britney Spears or Amanda Bynes, and people just kind of sit back and watch the train wreck. But fast forward now, right, as an adult, you're like, something deep had been going on, because there's no way that you're doing your dream or what we may deem as your dream job, and then you spiral out of control. But now we know that some really dark, twisted things were going on at the hands of grown men, because they haven't said anything about the women.
Well, I will say this too, though. There have been a lot of cases. One person in particular, Drake from Drake and Josh, Drake Bell. People may know him, may not know him. Of course, Google him. What was interesting to me is what gets lost in the whole documentary is that a lot of people don't realize at this time in particular, when all this was going on, all these kids involved were under 18 or under even 17 or even younger, like keep going younger, however far you want to go. So if there was a case that was to be brought and to be heard by any and everyone, their name is not going to be disclosed on the court documents. So it was John Doe for Drake. And even until the documentary came out, people knew that someone was assaulted, but they didn't know who until the documentary came out, which was insane in itself. But of course, he was underage when it took place. But the fact that, all this time had passed and nobody knew until the documentary came out.
Yeah.
That's wild. That's wild. And that's just one case in particular. See, that's the case they highlighted in the doc. We don't know if there's more John Doe.
Oh, of course. Because
Amanda,
they invited Amanda Bynes to come sit down and be a part of it. She said no. But then right after the documentary was released, she deleted all of her social media. And I don't know if y'all have seen Amanda Bynes lately. After you watch this, just go Google her. And you'll see that she's a shell of herself. That's what it looks like to me. Even it's so many others. What's her name? Jeanette McCurdy from iCarly, the one that plays Sam. We know that,
she's doing well, but she talks
right. But then she had a whole book out where she talks about how her mom and Dan Schneider and other adults around played a role in abusing her. So
yeah, she went through a lot of trauma. I think her mom died, and she was on the set in like less than a week, and it was weird. That everybody
she was going through abuse before the mom even died.
Well, I'm just saying in general, when someone close to you dies and you're back to work in a couple of days. I mean, granted, I will say this: that is the real world. That is the world that we live in for adults, but for a child to be going through that is insane.
Work and because we both have worked with kids. I still currently work with kids. I'll just say this, and I'm sure that y'all, if you are a parent or you work with children, know this. It is very important to build healthy, let me put that out there, healthy relationships with your children or your students so that if something is happening, they feel safe enough to come to you to let them know. The only reason why the Drake Bell situation, his wasn't with Dan Schneider, it was with Brian, I can't think of his last name, but
which is even
okay, gotcha. I thought so.
Which is even more insane because on the show, Drake and Josh's last name were Peck.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's what I'm getting at. So you mean to tell me folks they know nothing? Weird, man.
Oh, that's what I was saying. So the only reason why that situation was handled, I'd say handled by the authorities, is because Drake had a girlfriend. And that girlfriend's mom was like, something is not adding up. Why is a 40-plus-year-old man blowing our house phone up for my daughter's boyfriend who is 15, 16 years old? It's not making sense. And so because of her checking in, because he even said it, he felt safe at his girlfriend's house, and mom checking in with him, she was like, okay, talk to our therapist, and we figured it out. And, obviously the court case opened there. But and again, think some things are just going to happen because Drake had a close relationship with his dad, but because he was a child and he was impressionable, a predator, being Brian Peck, was able to put a wedge in between that relationship, get mom involved, who wasn't as hands-on, and things escalated. So
yeah, because his dad, that's the wildest thing to me about the whole thing was his dad was like, keep that man away from my child immediately.
And she didn't do that.
Immediately. He said that off rip. He was going to the higher ups on set. He was going to the people on set. They thought he was just raising Cain. It was like, hey, you need to chill out. You're going to mess with your son's marketability, your son's, way of living, this, that, and the third. And even when he relinquished the rights of managing Drake and handed everything over to his mother, the last thing he said was, make sure our child is not around said man that sexually assaulted him.
The crazy thing is, though, I know that this docuseries was giving us a glimpse into the late 90s, early 2000s. Fast forward to now 2024, where a lot of people have dreams of being influencers and YouTubers and all sorts of things where they're in front of a camera. And sometimes they start off as kids, or sometimes you have adults who they centered their kids as a part of their platform. And you have people who will put a lot of pictures of their kids up on social media thinking it's innocent. And then you go to TikTok and the search that's blowing up is this little 3-year-old with a pickle, right? It starts to become very, 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 very toxic and unsafe in a sense. And it does start to make me wonder, like, is it just not safe for you to even post your kids on social media? Like, do you need to put an emoji over them like girls do with these dudes? Like, what is it that needs to happen? Because that is mind blowing.
It's not a safe space. It never really was a safe space. I think a lot of people don't realize once you put stuff on social media, it just allows everyone to give their opinions on it because you're wanting feedback. And granted, everybody may say all feedback isn't good feedback, but interaction in general is what makes, things move, makes the needle move, and makes whatever you're putting out there gain traction and has more eyes on it. So, I mean, that's what comes with it. When you're putting stuff out into the world for everyone to see, everyone either isn't going to be like, oh, you the finest, or your kid looks the greatest, and everybody's just not of the same way of thinking or same level-headed or minded. I always tell myself this all the time in particular. Everybody was not raised the same as yourself. So you have to understand that everything you think is right, other people may not agree with. And you got to accept that. And that's a hard thing for a lot of people to do in general.
Yeah. So let us know below your thoughts on this conversation. Do you post your kids? Would you ever post your kids? And if you have seen or experienced inappropriate activities at work, would you go to HR or have you